For billions of years now, with its beautiful nature of the green land and the beauty of the deep dark blues of the ocean that flows around us, Earth has become the one and only home for all humanity. However, over the times, we have seen evolutions not only to humans and other creatures, but also to what evolved to the home that we are living with, through the making of the new islands, continents, mountains, and even natural resources such as plants and trees. But the only thing that asks us is how it is made. So, to the help of science, we are able to enlighten our mind with the knowledge of the two cycles that we are about to discuss. We are the group SediPhosers, and we are going to talk about the Sedimentary and Phosphorus cycle.
So what is sedimentary cycle? A sedimentary cycle is a cycle that contains different stages of impact on land, which is the weathering of an existing rock followed by the erosion of minerals, with each being transported and deposited. Then comes cementation or burial. An example of a sedimentary cycle is the phosphorus cycle, which will be talked about by my fellow groupmate later on. Much of the elements used in the sedimentary cycle are iron, calcium, sulfur, phosphorus, and other elements that consist of the Earth's crust. These elements are essentially combined and varied from one another depending on the consisting course of cycle, which is solution being the water phase and the sediment being the rock phase. In the solution phase, weathering releases minerals from Earth's crust in the form of salts, some of which dissolve in water, pass through a series of organisms, and ultimately reach the deep seas, where they settle out of circulation indefinitely. In the rock phase, other salts deposit out as sediment and rock in a shallow seas, eventually to be weathered and recycled.
Cheers, Benito, for explaining the sedimentary cycle. Now it's up to me to explain the phosphorus cycle. Like water cycle, carbon cycle, and nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle is a biogeochemical cycle. What is a biogeochemical cycle and why is it so important to be part of the phosphorus cycle, you ask? It is essential to all life and it gives pathway to two compartments of the earth, which is the abiotic and biotic. For phosphorus, it is indeed essential to animals, plants, and even microbes living in the soil. It's the main chemical position for the construction of DNA, RNA, which can also be induced the production of different kinds of cell membranes. The first cycle is slow in taxing, but it has 4 key points: sedimentary, weathering, absorption, and decomposition. First is weathering. Weathering collects phosphorus from the rocks and it will distribute evenly through the land and the water sources through rain. Absorption, as the definition applies, allowing plants and animals to absorb and help them grow, while animals eat and drink, and plants absorb it through the air and water. Then the third key will be decomposition. It needs to return to the environment, thus animal waste will be eaten by the decomposers, and when plants and animals die, then the third key will be decomposition. It needs to return to the environment, thus animal waste will be eaten by the decomposers, while plants and animals die, the bacteria will be inverted to organic phosphorus to inorganic phosphorus, which will resort to the last step, the sedimentary, which we need to tackle earlier, and that will start the cycle again.
Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence. However, they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. In simple terms, it is the study of how cells control the gene activity without touching or changing anything with it. Epigenetics are also modifications to DNA, the heritable changes in gene expression patterns that are independent of primary DNA sequence, changes the effect of the locus and the chromosome's outcome without alternating the underlying DNA sequence. So how does epigenetics may work, you may ask? Well, it can change a gene expression in numerous ways, such as DNA methylation, which is adding a chemical group to the DNA which blocks the proteins that the DNA read the gene. The histone modification, which the DNA wraps in proteins called histones. The DNA wrapped tightly and around histones cannot be accessed by the proteins that read the gene. And the non-coding RNA, which is when your DNA is used as instruction for coding and non-coding RNA. Coding RNA is used to make proteins, and non-coding RNA helps control the gene expression by attaching the coding RNA, along with certain proteins to break down the coding RNA so that it cannot be used to make proteins. Epigenetics can help you in any aspect of health, like with sickness, nutrition, and immunity, but it would mean that the effects are permanent and irreversible.
When it comes to the anthropogenic effects of humans on the phosphorus cycle, the main factors are mainly the use of fertilizers and raising livestock. There are high amounts of phosphorus in fertilizers and livestock that gets absorbed in the soil and then make its way to the water. Another way humans can affect the phosphorus cycle is through the use of laundry detergents, which contains STPP. STPP can have a severe effect on the life on water and can even lead to the death of fishes. For the anthropogenic effects on the sedimentary cycle, human activities such as extraction of fossil fuels and rocks can result to the destabilization of soils, increase of erosion, and a decrease in water quality. Another human activity that has a significant effect on the sedimentary cycle is removing trees, plowing fields, and overgrazing by livestock. These activities stabilizes soils and can further increase the chances of erosion.
What is an invasive species? An invasive species is an organism that is not a local or a resident of the ecosystem or area that it is in. We can say that there are foreign species that can cause ecological imbalances in the area that they have invaded. An organism or species can be classified as invasive if they can instantly adapt to the area, be able to reproduce and multiply in number in that area, and be able to destroy properties, the economy, and local animals and plants in the area. Invasive species can be classified as one of the leading threats to wildlife, especially to endangered species. Invasive species can easily overpower the native organisms in the area they have invaded for several reasons. First is because they can defeat the natives in the area for food. The native organisms might have a hard time competing with the invaders for food since they do not know them and they probably do not know what they can do. Plus, if these invasive species will be able to get that food that easily, they can easily make themselves stronger and make it more harder for natives to compete for food, which can lead to decreasing number of native organisms and be replaced by invasive species. Second is if they inhabit an area without other animals or other organisms hunting them. Invasive species can live and reproduce freely, knowing that no one will eat them. However, they can become the predator for the animals and organisms living in that area, which can again cause a decrease of number of the native species in that area. Invasive species spread mainly because of us humans by accident. For instance, when we travel and go to different places, we unintentionally carry species or organisms with us through our shoes, wheels, and other objects that we carry that species can stay in. With that in mind, are we humans can be considered as invasive species as well?